right. Shall we get started? Perfect. All right. Welcome, everyone. It's great to have you here for our very first Fast Track session, one of many to come in this year. First off, I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. We have Silke Zetsche, our VP of Global Commercial Partnerships for Agency and AdTech. Next up, you've already heard her speak, is Mary-Ellen Heffernan, our Business Development Director for North America, also for Agency and AdTech. And last but not least, our very own Timo Kunz, our founder of AudioStack. So before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items to mention. First off, as I mentioned, we wanted to remind you that we have a bunch of upcoming sessions in the next few months, ranging from ethical AI and brand safety to ROI and integration for business leaders, all the way to explain to you how to go from script to scale when it comes to AI audio. So if you haven't had a chance to sign up for the additional sessions yet, make sure to use the QR code here so you don't miss out. Second, we will have a designated Q&A at the very end of it. So if you have any questions, feel free to post them there, but you can also share them during the webinar as they kind of come up. We will do our very best to address all of them either live or during the chat itself. So keep an eye for that. If we don't get to all of the questions, don't worry, we'll get back to you directly with them, with the answers. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to my colleague Mary-Ellen, who's going to get us started with a deep dive into the future of omnichannel marketing. Oh, you're still on mute.
All right. So thank you so much, Lena. And hello, everyone. I want to thank you all for joining us this morning. It's incredible to see the global group joining us on the line today. So I want to welcome you all to the very first session of our Fast Track series. We didn't build this to add more noise to the AI conversation. We built it to act as a bit of a compass. So over the coming months, we're going to be tackling the big questions that actually keep creative and tech leaders up at night. Things like governance, building frameworks for trust and safety, and creating a practical enterprise playbook that works in the real world, not just as a demo. But for today, we're going to skip the how-to and we're going to go straight to the why. We want to look at why this shift is hitting so hard right now and how your team can actually lead through this transition rather than just reacting to the chaos. So here's how we're going to break things down. We're going to start with the state of play. I'm going to kick things off by framing where we are now, moving away from the random AI tools and into systemic design. We'll look at how we're finally breaking those old project management laws of physics to make quality a constant, not just a variable. Next, we'll go to the ecosystem view. I'm going to hand it over to Silke, and she's going to give us a high-level look at where AudioStack fits into the broader picture, not just as another platform, but as the actual infrastructure for the next generation of audio production. Then we're going to go to the founder's perspective. I'm going to wrap things up by sitting down with Timo for a quick fireside chat. We're going to go under the hood and talk about the vision behind the tech and where we see the whole industry heading next. So as Lena just said, feel free to drop any questions in the chat and we'll try to get to them as we go. So let's dive in. All right, so to set the stage for our discussion today, I want to start with a powerful perspective from Fei-Fei Li, who is widely regarded as the godmother of AI. And I'm going to quote her directly. Artificial intelligence is not a substitute for human intelligence. It is a tool to amplify human creativity and ingenuity. So that philosophy is the heart of how we see the media landscape shifting right now. So for a while, the industry treated AI like a box of random widgets, little text-to-speech, basic script generator, but that completely misses the point. If we only use AI to swap out individual tasks, we're still trapped in that manual siloed mindset. True transformation isn't about adding a new tool to your desk. It's about reimagining the content supply chain. So the big takeaway from CES earlier this month was exactly that. It's no longer about those standalone gadgets, but about deep integration of technologies and those associated workflows. So today, we're talking about moving away from siloed craft and towards systemic design. We're heading towards the reality where we automate the end-to-end pipeline, not to replace the human element, but to liberate it. So by integrating these workflows, we aren't just saving time. It allows your creative teams to stop worrying about the logistics of execution and get back to what they do best: strategy, ingenuity, and resonance. So here's the project management iron triangle I just mentioned. So we've all been haunted by the old pick two rule: time, scale, or cost. If you wanted things fast and big, quality was almost always the casualty, the price of doing business, so to speak. So AI has effectively broken those laws of physics by unlinking human hours from production output. We are from sorry, by unlinking human hours from production output, we're proving that quality isn't a variable anymore, it's a constant. We've moved past managing those trade-offs. We're here to eliminate them. So at CES, you saw it everywhere. It was basically intelligent transformation. So we have officially moved past the AI as a feature and into systemic design. So this is where intelligence is baked directly into the infrastructure to coordinate workflows and do the heavy lifting of execution. Digital transformation in creative fields has historically been pretty superficial. So, for example, we replace the physical mic with a digital one or a human voice with a synthetic one. But here's the reality: adding a single AI tool to a broken manual desk doesn't solve scale problems, it just creates faster bottlenecks. So, without a design led approach, you're just speeding up the mess. We know that true leadership in 2026 and beyond isn't about that collection of the most AI tools. It's about mastering the two components of systemic design. Number one would be systemic production, and that's the functional engine. It's the ability to create at a volume that was previously impossible. Again, synthetic voices, digital avatars, or generative design tokens. And the second is that layer of systemic orchestration. So that's the connective tissue. It's the governance and the coordination that ensures those production units talk to each other. It's the logic that basically says, for example, if this script is approved, trigger the voice clone, apply the brand sonic DNA, and deploy to an ad server. Again, moving away from that siloed craft where every single asset is a manual high friction project and towards that autonomous content supply chain. So in a systemic design framework, again, not about the collection of apps. It's a system designed to perform at scale without human intervention at every turn. This isn't just theory. We're seeing it in live environments where the content supply chain is fully realized. So that's the fundamental difference between having an AI tool and having a systemic orchestration layer and production engine. So this leads us to the new gold standard, again, that was all over CES, hyper-personalization. The iron triangle used to make personalization at scale impossible. If you wanted 10,000 different versions of a message for 10,000 different listeners, you simply couldn't afford it time-wise, and it was cost prohibitive. AI has officially broken that constraint. So now quality is a constant, regardless of volume. This allows us to move past generic blast messaging and deliver content that feels deeply personal to the individual listener. When you treat the pipeline as a single automated workflow, bespoke is no longer a luxury, it's a baseline. And next, it's moving from static to always on activations. You produce a high quality ad or podcast intro, and that was it. It basically sat on the shelf until the next manual update. But in the world of systemic design, we're moving towards always on activations. Think of it as a shift from a static advertisement to a responsive digital world. By automating the flow from data input to creative output, your content is now as fluid as the world around it. From social feeds and display ads to video and audio, your brand can now pivot instantly based on weather, sports, or even breaking news. You aren't just launching a campaign, you're maintaining a living infrastructure that ensures your brand is always relevant. So again, take a look at the future. The competitive landscape is shifted and has shifted. The winners won't be the ones with the best prompts and the most creative hacks. They'll be the ones who've built the best pipelines. Success will now require the shift in mindset. Stop buying the tools for production alone. Start investing in orchestration that bridges those gaps. design the system, and the scale will follow. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Silke, who's going to walk you through where AudioStack fits in with that broader ecosystem and helps brands scale. Silke?
Awesome. Thank you, Marianne. And thanks everyone for joining. I think that's a great moment, I think, for me to step in. And I actually want to start with a quote from someone I know and and actually respect deeply, Penry Jones. Penry has always understood that AI transformation isn't about a single tool or isolated use case, very similar to what Marianne was just talking about, but it's all about rethinking the entire system around creativity and data. And he actually once said, your agency spends 6 months building personas while an algorithm finds 1 million market segments just before lunch. And I think that line captures where marketing is today. AI allows us to bring creative intuition and data precision together. And when those two meet, creative stops being static and it becomes part of a performance engine that shifts. And that shift, I think, is already underway. And of course, this shift can be absolutely applied to audio. People spend nearly 4 hours a day listening, which is over a third of media consumption. And yet, audio still receives a disproportionately small share of ad investment. And that is not because audio doesn't work, of course. It's because it hasn't been easy to activate. And meanwhile, social remains overfunded. And of course, TV, especially with the growth of CTV, continues to pull in its fair share of ad spend relative to the consumption. So I've been in audio since 2017, and this pattern hasn't changed much. Audio is almost always the first thing that is going to be cut off a media plan or marketing initiative. And to be honest, before I joined the space back in 2017, I thought of audio more of radio, right? Familiar, safe, and that channel that does one-to-many type of communication. But of course, since the rise of podcast and audio itself, I've come to see it very differently. It's intimate, it's emotional, and it's one of the only channels actually that people truly invite into their lives, not just actually consume it. So why hasn't audio been fully embraced as part of omnichannel marketing? Well, one reason perhaps is, and maybe that's my controversial opinion, is that audio or the audio world itself has felt a little too exclusive and perhaps a little too inaccessible. And that can make brands, of course, think that they need the perfect sonic branding strategy before they even start. And in reality, of course, sonic branding isn't the starting point, it's the outcome. The best brands, of course, they test and they learn and they understand how their audience uses audio, where it fits into their day, and how sound and audio actually can shape perception. And audio is incredible, powerful at building imagination and aspiration. It allows consumers to picture themselves with a brand and not just see it. And that's why audio deserves a place in the omnichannel mix, not as an isolated channel, but as an emotional layer across multiple touch points. So, in my opinion, another thing that holds audio back isn't really creativity at all, but it's production. And traditionally, producing high quality audio took days or weeks, in some cases, months. And that simply doesn't align with a world where campaigns change in hours and data updates constantly. And so, when creative can't move at the speed of media, it gets deprioritized. And that disconnect is why audio has lagged, not because it's ineffective, but because it hasn't been agile to date. So what's changed? Well, we finally have the capability to make high quality audio production fast, simple, and scalable. And that is exactly what we have at AudioStack been obsessing about for the last 6 years. And I think that matters because it changes behavior. Brands can test and learn very quickly. Agencies can create truly personalized data-informed variations. And media and adtech partners can include audio without any complexities. So in other words, when audio becomes easy to produce, it becomes easy to use. And the more audio becomes a default part of an omnichannel mix. And the reason we can do that now, of course, is infrastructure. I think Mary Ellen very nicely illustrated this in terms of the orchestration of everything. And it's really important to understand this isn't text to speech. It's an end-to-end audio system from content to delivery that makes audio programmable and responsive. Think about it in four connected layers. You ingest or create content, you generate or use voices, including sound designs, apply professional grade production, and then deliver it seamlessly into any channel or workflow. Everything is orchestrated in a single automated workflow. And again, that's important to understand because it turns audio into a system and not just a project. And once that production friction is removed, audio stops being the slowest part of the process and actually starts moving at the same speed as data and media. And here's a really important part to point out. This is also where audio transforms video. In a sound-on video environment, audio makes video assets unmissable. Visuals show what's happening, but of course the audio tells you how it feels or the context. Sound becomes the contextual attention heightening driver. It captures focus, it carries meaning, and it makes messages stick, especially when people are distracted or multi-screening. And that's when audio becomes truly omnichannel, not a separate format, but the layer that amplifies video. So of course, once you have an end-to-end audio infrastructure in place, once audio is programmable and responsive and able to move at the speed of data, the question now becomes, well, what can you actually enable with it? So this next slide isn't about theory. These are 6 real examples of how AI-powered audio is already being used as part of an omnichannel marketing approach across creative automation, dynamic creative, audio for video, and long-form content. They're all different use cases, but all powered by the same underlying capability: scalable, automated, end-to-end audio production. So what these examples actually show is the real impact of removing production friction. It goes from creative automation, allowing anyone, any teams from marketer to adtech vendor, their sales teams, their operational teams to produce broadcast-ready audio in minutes, not days. Audio creative becomes fast, repeatable, and most importantly, accessible. Dynamic creative, of course, takes us a step further. Audio can ingest live data, update while a campaign is still running, and drives incremental outcomes, whether that's footfall, sales, or actually relevance. And creative is no longer static, it's now responsive. And then when we think of audio and video, the impact is immediate. More often than not, actually, it's audio that draws people in and drives the message recall, and especially when it's personalized or localized. Visuals, again, supports what's happening, but the sound is why video sticks. And finally, long-form audio. Produced at scale allows brands to show up consistently and credibly, even in moments when speed really matters. And the common thread, of course, is infrastructure. With an end-to-end automated audio production system, audio becomes the medium that shapes the experience while remaining fully data-driven. And creative can change as data changes, messaging adapts as behavior adapts, and audio can be deployed in real time at scale and without the production friction. And that's why audio now has the speed, the scale, and the intelligence to be truly omnichannel. And I think that's the actual opportunity in front of us. And so with that, I'll hand over back to Mary Ellen and to our last part of the webinar, which is a conversation with one of our founders, Timo. Thank you, guys.
That was fabulous, Silke. Thank you so much. All right, fireside chat time. So I'm thrilled to welcome one of the visionary minds behind the technology. So when we talk about the intersection of technology or technical precision and creative soul, few people embody it better than Timo. Timo belongs to a very rare and elite super group of individuals, the PhD musician. I like to say he's our resident rock doc. Timo is in the company of Brian May from Queen, who has a doctorate in astrophysics, and my favorite, Dexter Holland of The Offspring, who holds a PhD in molecular biology. I think he was working on the HIV vaccine from USC. Timo brings that same dual engine of scientific rigor and musical intuition to the world of AI. Timo shared a powerful observation at one point regarding the sudden acceleration of this field. He spoke about how the industry spent years waiting for AI audio to become truly listenable, only for things to shift almost overnight. He described it as a moment where someone had finally flipped that switch, where technology evolved so rapidly that it moved from conceptual tool to something that was actively supercharges his own creative process as a musician and technologist. So that's that flip switch moment, the transition from experimental to a tool that amplifies human ingenuity that we're going to explore today. So, Timo, welcome, welcome, welcome. Very happy to have you here.
Wow, what an introduction. Thank you very much. So thanks for raising the bar here. Thanks, Maria.
All right, so listen, let's talk about the aha moment. You mentioned waiting for that magic moment where AI voices would finally sound human. What was that specific technical breakthrough or recording you heard that convinced you it was time to quit your day job and really start to build AudioStack with the other two founders?
Yeah, great. Yeah, where do we start? Yeah, first of all, also on my behalf, welcome everybody. Very excited to be here, and it's the first webinar of our AI-powered future, and it's a very exciting year, as you probably already seen. And very very excited to have you all. Thanks for joining. I'm very excited to have you all on. Thanks for the question. Yeah, and thanks for the amazing setup. And it was indeed a big moment. Um, you touched on my background. So actually, I did a PhD in AI actually back in the days, but I've been a musician and been producing audio all my life. And I was always hovering over this topic in terms of like, I knew that if there was a moment when you actually can make audio production fast and easy and scalable with the help of AI, that will change the game. And actually, the moment was in 2019. So not to get into technical details, but there was a new architecture actually in text to speech, which was the Tacotron and WaveNet architecture, and Google did the first good implementation, and I heard it, and I thought like, okay, that's the moment. Like now, the state of the art is advancing, and pretty much we can. Things are going to move forward very, very quickly there. And this is actually when we set off and actually started building AudioStack, and the mission was right from the start to actually make audio production scalable. So at the time, it was all about voice, of course, and I think you actually explained this very well at the beginning, right? So if you actually solve one issue in a let's say in a production chain actually of creating audio, you still have a bottleneck with the rest. And for us, it was right at the beginning. What I found inspiring, what if you can automate audio production end to end and like just move very, very quickly? Like just imagine what you can do. So voice was always an important part, but to orchestrate this entire thing, this is actually what we set out to do. And I think if you think about it, right? So if you wonder why your favorite Netflix series only has 10 episodes instead of 25, or your favorite podcaster only actually produces 1 or 2 episodes a week, it's not because they don't have ideas, right? It's because actually producing and actually the production element is tedious, it takes time, it's costly, and so on and so forth. And just imagine what you can do with creativity if this is actually set free. And this really inspired me to go hard on the topic. And also what we've seen since then is pretty much how audio is becoming more and more important. So I think Silke, you said something like, audio the only medium that actually people really invite into their lives, right? Actually also I think it's fantastic that it's the only thing you can listen to while doing something else. We have actually very interesting customers which actually really go for that aspect of audio. I always tell people every video asset in the world needs an audio asset to go with it, not the other way around, right? So if you actually also start paying attention to audio, actually it's everywhere. And also to the earlier point, I think this is now for the first time also where people think end-to-end audio production rather than just voice. So yeah, it's been a long time coming, and 2026 is going to be an interesting one.
Well, we're going to get to your predictions at the end, but let's talk about the problem with dynamic creative. So many brands struggle with personalization at scale. So can you walk me through a use case where AudioStack solved a problem that was literally impossible with traditional human production and not just expensive? Because we know expensive is part of this, but let's talk about other than that.
Yeah. So I still feel I'm new to advertising as such, even though we've been in the race now for a couple of years. But obviously, my background is in tech and audio as such, right? One thing I'm 100% sure is if you ask 100 marketeers, do you actually want one generic creative or one generic ad, and that you actually play into the expensive media that you bought? Or do you want actually tailored or personalized or even hyper personalized ads where you can actually even use the data that you have? And it's not an ad that you approved 3 weeks ago, but it's something actually that was actually done last night, or that you can even update on the fly. I guarantee you 100 marketeers actually will say, I want that. At least also all the marketeers that I have ever talked to. And so it's one thing what people want, and one thing actually that we see in real life. And if you bring it down to one thing, they all want it. Why don't they do it? And the reason is the production of these creatives is very clunky. The turnaround time is very long, and actually you cannot not scale it. And hence, at the end of the day, good ideas you revert actually to this one this one ad. So yeah, I think what AudioStack now actually do, we bring the friction of this production process down so that it's so low that you can do all of these things. It's just so quick. The turnaround is so quick, and it doesn't really matter if you produce 5 ads or 500 ads or 5,000. It doesn't really matter if you update them once an hour on the fly, or if you actually just pre-produce a bunch and then actually A/B test them or use them in different channels. And I think this becomes now even more relevant because you see that so many companies invest in data, right? So if you think about Publicis, the big media houses, they actually invest in data companies, they invest in AI. I think, Siki, you also talked about data points, right? What can be used. And I think also the faster and the bigger it is, the more relevant it is. So for example, and I think I'm only now getting to your question, to a use case, if I think retail, you can actually, retailers normally have hundreds of stores. They want a local audience normally. Then also, obviously, they have a lot of products, actually, a lot of price changes, a lot of ideas, what they can do, how they can actually personalize or address a niche audience actually that they can attract to their store. And AudioStack has been running in the EU, in the US, in Australia, big retail campaigns, sometimes thousands of stores, sometimes different languages, sometimes connected to an API where you on the fly actually you create relevance by updating the content as you go on and actually pairing up with data signals that these retailers have. And I think that is absolutely fascinating. Something you couldn't have done even a few years ago, and I think something that we'll see a lot more in the future.
Well, I love that. And you actually answered that question and my next question. So I'm going to actually leapfrog because you answered the 80-20 for the value proposition for CMOs, basically in one answer. So let's preview what Fast Track 2 is going to be. I'm going to talk about the ethics behind. So the ethics of voice. So with voice cloning becoming a commodity, how is AudioStack leading the conversation of ethical AI and consent when working with high-profile brand ambassadors and publishers?
Yeah, so that's always a very, very relevant question. It has been right from the start. I mean, obviously, we've started out as a mixed team right from the start in terms of like we consider ourselves part of the creative community. So for us, it was never, ramming AI down people's throat. We were always kind of like inspired by how the creative community is going to evolve with what AI can do. And obviously copyright and pretty much ethical, anything ethical, whether it's voice cloning or pretty much ethical use of voice, compensation for voice actors and so on, that has always been a topic. So there's no doubt that AI is reshaping the landscape, and it's been reshaping the landscape about this like very quickly over the past years. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Yeah, it just, I think there needs to be actually the solution cannot be that we forget about the creative community and move on, but actually we need to get the creative community or be part of the creative community and take them on a journey towards fair. There are a lot of challenges and a lot of pretty much open questions in that field, right? So obviously it starts with voice, always ethical use of voice. How do we keep voice safe? Now voices are very easy to clone. How are voice actors fairly compensated and so on? But also, music rights, and there are all different kinds of like how you keep your data safe, all different kinds of questions. That has always been part of our mission, actually. So we don't hold rights as such. We also don't really provide legal services, of course, but we've always been in the game of kind of like shaping that narrative and also helping our customers, for one, to keep the data safe, and also B, to advise in terms of like what's fair and actually how the field develops. So much so that also we've been actively involved in shaping policy in that matter. So my co-founder, Petar, our CTO, normally is very much deep into the topic. So I think he's been at government or invited to UK government hearings a few times now, where actually it's about like shaping the policy of the future. And you're also very excited that we have a dedicated session for that.
Yes, awesome. Well, and that's fast track too, everybody. And then lastly, my favorite questions. I always love to hear predictions. So in your recent insights, you mentioned TV you can talk to and real-time news ads. What is the one trend in audio that most marketers are currently ignoring, but but you feel will be standard practice in the next 2 years?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of predictions as well, and also start of the year always a good one. So I'll give you two actually. So first of all, I think personalization is gonna take off now, right? So I think AI really has cleared all the hurdles now. There's so much you can do. Also, the value of personalization is now it's so much more real, it's so much more measurable, and pretty much also the data that actually has been sitting around and everybody's kind of like looking for innovative ways what to do with it. AI will finally actually gonna pave the way to make using that very easy. Yeah. And so one of my predictions is personalization, especially hyper personalization. We will be such more. And I'm going past beyond 2026. I always tell people like in a few years, let's actually call it 3 or 5 years, we will actually look back and we will be like, what were we actually really happy at the time with running one creative across all the media. So I think that will probably look almost funny in a few years. And I think 2026 is really gonna be gonna expedite that. And let me give you a short second one. I think also audio, we see that audio is becoming much more relevant in all conversations. Yeah, also in the conjunction with video, of course, we see people that pretty much are in the video space and that used to not care about audio and now actually see how audio in combination with video is a strategic advantage. Obviously, we are in the middle of this, and we also see that actually a lot of people, especially CMOs, start thinking about their audio strategy. So the other prediction is, mark my words, going through 2026, you will hear much more people actually talking to you about audio strategy.
Love it. Thank you so much, Timo. That was amazing. You will all be hearing a lot more from Timo in the coming months. I am going to kick it over to Lena for a couple of questions.
Hi, yeah, so we've got a couple of questions come in. So I'm going to get started with the first one. I think, Timo, this one's a good one for you. What is the difference between you and a general voice provider like 11 Labs, Cartesia, Hume, etc.? There's so many right now. Why not go directly with them?
Oh yeah, that's an interesting question. Also, it's a bit of a day one question for us, right? So when we started, there was already, as I already said, Google had a good text to speech model. Then I think Amazon was actually followed, and there were players popping up actually along the journey. So obviously, voice is a very important part as a part of audio production. We work closely with different speech providers, first and foremost, 11 Labs actually. However, also if you think about really automating this entire chain, we are all about that, right? So normally, if you already are doing something with a voice provider or be working with 11 on something, and you pretty much already explored what voice and like embed voice in audio production can do for you, then as a next step, it's normally AudioStack can create a lot of value, pretty much showing you how you can actually automate that workflow you had in mind end to end.
Great, thank you. And then I think this one might be a good one for Silke. I run a lot of video assets in comparison to audio. How can I repurpose my video assets?
I get that question actually quite a lot because more people obviously run video than audio assets. Well, there's two things. We talked at great length that audio makes a great video. That's why it's called audiovisual. And I think especially in CTV or any broadcast television or YouTube, right, where sound is always on. I think a right high quality audio makes a difference. But if the question is to create audio assets from a video assets, we actually have a really nifty feature as well where you can actually ingest any content. So that could also be existing advertising or an ad, be that a video ad or display ad, to then generate audio content. You could either make this a digital twin or create from scratch, and then allowing you to really be in some way, shape, or form omnichannel because you might start off with one asset and then via our platform you can have multiple ones, audio only, audio with video, and so forth.
Perfect. I think that is everything we're going to be able to do for today. Thank you so much. I think there's a couple more that we'll be answering in the chat in a second. If there's anything else you would like to know, please do reach out to the team. But before we head off, I'm just going to hand it over to Mary Ellen one last time to give you a quick heads up of what we have coming up in our next session. So I'm going to hand it over to Mary Ellen.
Awesome. So what's next? Ethical AI and brand safety. Timo actually did a pretty good preview of what we'll be talking about at length. So as we supercharge creativity, we must do so on the foundation of trust. So our next fast track session is really going to focus on ethical AI and brand safety, breaking down how enterprises navigate this frontier with integrity. We'll explore compliance like SOX 2, EU AI Act, to name a few, asset governance, how to protect your IP from digital cloning, technical safeguards like the full privacy sandbox to ensure your data remains your own. And we're also defining the gold standard of ethical voice cloning. So in an era where anything can be generated, brand safety is no longer a luxury. It's truly our most valuable asset. And then up after that, it's going to be the ROI of integration, which is a business case for breaking the traditional cost, time, quality triangle that we talked about at length today. Next would be the generative playbook, moving from theory to execution on how to scale content without losing that human touch. And then the new standard in quality, showcasing AI production that is indistinguishable from professional studio work. So that's it for today. And this was just a kickoff. So our goal is to move you past the random tools and towards that autonomous content supply chain. Whether you're breaking the old management hurdles or building always on a brand voice, it's time to lead the charge rather than just reacting to the change. And I want to thank you for being part of the beginning of this global conversation with us, and we'll see you at the next one. Take care.